Taylor Lee wakes up in a waiting room, being instructed to go to an office where they will meet Dr. Albert Krueger, the renowned CEO of the Krueger Corporation, who are well known for their dream therapy techniques. Taylor, confused to how they ended up there, they soon uncover the sinister plans of the psychopathic Dr. Krueger, who has malicious plans for Taylor. Hi folks, I'm R, your narrator. Welcome to Therapy with Dr. Albert Krueger, which has an interesting story reminding you of Thanos. You're gonna know what I'm talking about by the end of the video. If you have any cool game suggestions, send them over to me on my Twitter or subreddit. Also keep in mind that this video will have spoilers, and with that said, let's begin. Being in a state of limbo between dream and wakeness, as if in a lucid dream, Taylor Lee gets called to Dr. Albert Krueger's office, room 1015. Confused to what is happening and where they are oblige to the voice's commands, going to room 1015, where they encounter a young man roughly in his early 30s or late 20s, wearing a menacing smile, leaning over his desk, patiently waiting for Taylor. The man welcomes Taylor to the company known as Krueger Health Solutions Corporation, seemingly the largest leading multi-specialty medical groups in the G2 district, the district that Taylor is located in. The man then introduces himself as Dr. Albert Krueger, explaining on the nature of this encounter, mentioning how Taylor is here for a session of dream therapy, with him being in charge of it. Taylor, not recollecting how they ended up here, puzzled to how any of this came to be, protests that they are not in need of any therapy. Albert then goes on to reassure Taylor, oddly confessing how he has a PhD in marine biology, a completely unrelated study. Unsurprisingly, Taylor calls Albert a scam and repeats that they're not sick, when Albert goes on manipulating Taylor by conducting a simple math test to check their sanity. Taylor, unsure how they ended up there, starting to question their own sanity to some degree, eagerly accepts the test to prove their sanity. As Albert raises the math questions, providing Taylor with multiple answer cards to choose from. At one point, one of the cards withdrawn displays bloodstains on it, which Albert quickly switches, acting as if there was no blood, and Taylor is seeing things, yet again pushing his plan on making Taylor question their own sanity. As Taylor dismisses this incident, they manage to answer all of the questions correctly, which leads to Albert suggesting a short break before they continue with the session. While sitting in silence, Albert in a strange manner engages Taylor in a conversation, asking if they're from G2, to which they respond that they've lived there their entire life. Albert in response goes on talking about himself, how he was born in the G2 district but went on to the G4 district to study in college or university for his post-secondary education. The conversation ends in dead silence when Albert decides the break is over, when he introduces a game to play with Taylor, somehow related to the session. Setting up the game of cups and balls, Albert notices that he's missing a ball to begin with. He quickly excuses himself to fetch a ball, leaving the office when Taylor hears a loud scream coming from outside, followed by Albert glitching into the office as if it's all happening in a digital simulation. When Taylor confronts Albert about the scream, he completely dismisses it, acting oblivious, when Taylor drops the Inquisition, getting back to the session just that they can leave. As Albert sets up the game casually, Taylor notices an eyeball being used instead of a normal ball, seemingly belonging to the person who just screamed outside of the office. Taylor, being shocked to what they're seeing, Albert very calmly and indifferently disregards it as a tomato-tomato situation, with an eyeball being a sphere, hence technically being a ball. He further explains it's an eyeball donated by a previous patient, with the contract signed allowing the staff to use the donated organs however they see fit. Despite it being legally questionable, it's definitely ethically wrong, to which Taylor doesn't protest anymore, getting on with the bizarre antics of Albert just so they can finish the session. Despite being very good at the game and getting most of the cups correctly, Taylor fails to guess the right cup at every round. After the game ends, Albert yet again suggests a short break when he gets interrupted by a telephone call with the person on the other end being referred to as William, who is making a morbid suggestion of killing something. Taylor, hearing the conversation and how indifferent and calm Albert is, not concerned for Taylor hearing this sensitive conversation, Taylor starts becoming worried, thinking their life is at risk. That's when they decide to obey Albert so they can leave the office in one piece. Taylor even tries to flatter Albert and engage him in a conversation to get on his good side, asking if he's somehow related to the company as his name is Krueger, knowing full well he's probably the founder or the owner. Albert, fully in control, explains that the company was his father's, but it was passed down to him after his death, which made him leave G4 to get back to G2 and run the business, a business that he actually enjoys and finds rewarding. As the break comes to an end, Albert introduces the next part of the session being a different part of the therapy, getting to know his patients much better. For that, he requires the patients to keep their eyes closed at all times and answer honestly to any question thrown at them. Taylor showing reluctance, Albert makes a deal to tell Taylor about himself in return as well, which Taylor finally accepts. Albert goes on asking about Taylor's childhood and family, to which they answer that their parents were immigrants who came to the G2 for opportunities. They continue that they had 2 siblings and all lived together, making them a pretty ordinary family. Albert, as promised, talks about his own life growing up, explaining his life was ordinary as well, with his parents being well-known figures in the medical field. Albert then asks the second question when pounding sounds are heard followed by cries of an animal. Taylor, intrigued and concerned at the same time to open their eyes, holds themselves from the urge, obeying the demands of Dr. Krueger. Albert follows with another question, asking what would Taylor do if they had a magic wand to change whatever in their life, to which they respond that they are content with everything that they have. Albert in return gives an arrogant and prude response that he wishes the world had less mediocre people. He quickly changes his answer by dismissing it as a joke, displaying what a vain and unsympathetic person he is, only focusing on his career and achievements, looking at everyone else with contempt. Continuing with the next question, Albert asks if Taylor has ever had the urge to murder anyone they knew or even dismember them and make them into a hamburger, to which they act shocked, protesting what kind of messed up question that is. Albert, however, instead of answering the question, puts a spin on it, saying that he doesn't like hamburgers, not denying and not confessing to actually liking and fantasizing of killing people. Strange, horrifying sounds are then heard, to which Taylor stays composed, keeping their eyes shut in order to get the session over with. Albert then suggests another short break when loud incoherent mumbles of someone is heard outside. Being inconvenienced and annoyed, Albert instructs Taylor to watch a video while he deals with the sound, to which Taylor pleads with Albert not to kill the man. Albert laughs off Taylor's suggestion, saying nothing like that would happen. When he leaves, then suddenly the video starts with Dr. Krueger disappearing. The video is a commercial of the Krueger Corporation, which does a great job at distracting Taylor, when a glitch reveals the true shape of Dr. Krueger being a shadow figure accompanied by 2 monstrous stick figures on either side of him. The scene subsequently goes back to normal, with Albert saying he dealt with a mumbling person outside in a peaceful manner. He then introduces the next part of the therapy, being a Rorschach test. Taylor, actually interested in the test, is provided with images which Albert emphasizes not to be flipped. The images progressively become more grim, showing gruesome imagery, with the multiple answers changing into words of murder, massacre, bloodbath, etc. Taylor, starting to believe they must be in a surreal world where their vision is manipulated, continues with the test, ignoring the oddities to survive the session. As the session nears its end, Albert provides Taylor with a survey about the experience. Regardless to what Taylor answers, Albert suddenly starts glitching, asking Taylor if they would sacrifice themselves to the G2 district. Taylor, having the sense of impending doom hit them like a brick, with their fears of becoming the latest victim of the strange and psychopathic Dr. Krueger comes to a full climax, rendering them motionless, frozen in their seat. Albert continues that he needs Taylor to help them feed the hungry people of G2 district. Taylor's sacrifice would be a stepping stone for making the district better, maybe someday making it as glorious and prestigious as the G4 district. Taylor, confused, uses all of her energy to utter who needs to be fed when he mentions the ones who are his children, which makes Taylor remember Albert was referring to them as his child too, as if the hungry people used to be his patients as well. That's when, without a second hesitation, Albert transforms into a monster, lunging at Taylor, thanking them for their contribution to the G2 district. The post-credit scene shows Taylor's remains being reduced to intestines, bones and part of the head, who somehow manages to talk, pleading with the players to try once more. They continue giving their analysis that Albert seems to use the dream therapy to fish out certain people, thinking this time around they should be more obedient, listening to everything Albert says and also doing all the tests, questions and the games correctly. This portrays how Albert in fact targets specific people in their dreams, hence why they don't remember how they ended up in his office, who he analyzes to be whether a fit for certain duties or simply be food for his children. Trying the session once more, with almost everything repeating itself exactly as before, Taylor becomes more obedient and answers everything correctly. This leads to the point where Albert plays a video for Taylor, which this time is glitched out, being more terrifying. The session coming to an end, Albert asks Taylor if they would like to become a Dream Eater, joining the group of monstrous beings whom Albert refers to as his children. Albert continues explaining Dream Eaters used to be patients of his, just like Taylor, who are very loyal servants, with Taylor seemingly being a great fit as they were very obedient and showed competence in tests as they got all the questions correctly. As Taylor protests and refuses to join the army of Dream Eaters, the screen goes to black, with Albert thanking them for their contribution to making G2 a better place. That's when a sight of the new transformed Taylor is seen, being a monstrous Dream Eater. This portrays how Albert preys on unknowing people when they are asleep, analyzing their competence and obedience to whether join his army of Dream Eaters or become the food of the Dream Eaters. If the patient is not competent or obedient enough, they become food, and if they are very competent, they become his loyal servants. That's why Albert, in one of the earlier tests, getting to know Taylor better, jokingly mentioned that if he could, he would get rid of mediocre people. Despite saying it was a joke, it's revealed that he meant what he said. He also asked if Taylor ever fantasizes about chopping people up into food, depicting how he fantasizes about this all the time and actually does it. In the final ending, if Taylor decides to disobey Albert and get everything incorrectly, the video while waiting changes into a number of skeletons dancing. Confused to what they're watching, they dismiss it, moving on to the Rorschach test when Taylor flips all of the Inkblot cards, stumbling upon a drawing signed by Albert. As Taylor asks Albert about the drawing, he suddenly loses his normal composure and becomes furious, lunging at Taylor, which makes the session completely black out. Taylor awakens to see themselves back in the session from where they left off, when Albert apologizes to them for losing his composure. Albert goes on to explain, despite looking similar to the drawing and seemingly being friends, he and the person on the drawing were actually arch enemies. Albert continues they were classmates, with both of them being very competent and good at school, which made people always compare them together. Despite that, Albert was always on top, being the better student, but the person on the drawing didn't stop trying to beat Albert in studies. Albert continues that he admired and despised this person at the same time, feeling bad for him that he didn't continue working hard to reach his full potential. Taylor, in response, goes on mentioning that Albert in fact enjoyed the fact that this person saw Albert as his goal, competing with him, and that Albert misses him alongside his friends from G4, suggesting that Albert should contact him at some point. Despite Albert's failed attempts to deny this, it's clear he actually misses his friends and wants to meet them again, especially this person on the drawing, as Albert wouldn't draw him if he didn't miss him. Albert then ends the session early, saying how he actually enjoyed talking with Taylor, someone who's rebellious, someone he's never met the like of before. Albert then goes on explaining how he would like to be friends with Taylor if they don't mind, with them maybe contacting them in the future. That's when Albert bids Taylor goodbye, with Taylor waking up in front of their computer, noticing that it was all nothing but a dream, with everything that happened happening in their dreams. After some time, Albert is seen calling someone, referring to him as Vincent. Reading an email, Taylor notices how it's sent from Albert, who fills up Taylor on what he's done so far, explaining he contacted his archenemy Vincent, happy that he's done so, listening to Taylor's advice. Albert then asks if Taylor would like to meet up with him sometime, seemingly liking the fact that he met someone rebellious for once, making his interactions more fun. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Taylor would shut their computer down and throw it into the bin after burning it, after what they went through with the psychopathic Albert. According to the story, different districts exist in this universe where Albert and Taylor both live in G2. G2 seems to be a lower class district which Albert tries to improve by creating an army of Dream Eaters. It's not fully explained what the Dream Eaters are capable of and what they do, but it seems that Albert wants to kill any mediocre or incompetent person, only leaving the highly competent and skilled people alive, so the district could improve in terms of product production, work ethics, quality of care and work, and everything else that comes with it. According to a trivia, Dr. Krueger is in some way inspired by Freddy Krueger, the monster who kills people in their dreams, which results in the victims dying in the real world. So it's possible when Dr. Krueger analyzes his patients, he decides whether they're incompetent or not, and if they are, they die under the hands of Dream Eaters who kill them in the dream world, which also kills them in the real world. On the other hand, if the patients are very competent and obedient, they become the new Dream Eaters, joining the army Albert is forming to make the G2 district a better place. The people he chooses seem to be from the G2 district, and regardless to their backstory, Albert acts completely indifferent, only paying attention to how they do in their tests. As Taylor managed to do the unthinkable, they didn't fit in any criteria, making Albert see them as a human, a different entity than his typical patients, becoming whether food or soldiers. There's apparently a different game linked to the story, expanding much more on the lore, introducing the Vincent character. Depending on how this video does, I might cover that game as well. And that's it for the end of this video, folks. If you enjoyed it, you can stay tuned for more by hitting on the subscribe button and the notification bell. It's been your host Star. Until the next video, have a fantastic day.